Buenos días. My name is Dulce Juarez. It's such an honor. I'm very humble that I got invited to be a part of this really wonderful experience that y'all are having here today. So I'm really happy that I got to be a part of this. So my name is Dulce Juarez, and I'm with the American Civil Liberties Union. And right now we're doing a huge campaign, which is United Against 1070. Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah? See what's okay. So I work with ACLU. What I do is I document abuses with 1070. Can anybody tell me what 1070 is? I can? Anybody? Or some of the youth? Do y'all know what 1070 is? It just passed a few months ago, a few weeks ago. No one? No one knows what 1070 is? No? Anyone on this side want to share? No? Want to take a guess?
Very bad law.
Yes. So the 1070 is a really horrible law that impacts everybody here in our state. Basically, 1070 will make it legal for officers to ask people for their papers. It's the papers, please. Show me your papers. Not please. Not please. So officers can now, during the time of a stop, can ask people for their documentation and about their immigration status. So there are a few things that we believe at the ACLU. We work to protect people's freedom and people's liberty under the Constitution of the United States. So it is our freedom to be protected, right? Everybody should be equally protected, and that's why we feel that it's wrong for officers to be questioning people about their immigration status at stop. That means that officers are acting as immigration agents, where they should just be, protecting and keeping our community safe. But that's not the case. There are many, many people across the state that are living in a lot of fear, and especially living in fear of the law enforcement even. So what we're doing is we're going across the state and talking to people about their rights. And some of the rights that people have, whether they have papers or not, or no papers, they have the right to be silent and they have the right to see an attorney. So in the year 2010, April 2010, Governor Brewer signed 1070. It was introduced by, does anybody know who introduced 1070? Senator Russell Pierce. And he's also, well, he's an ex-senator because they took him out. And that's the power the community has to be able to recall a person. And they recalled Pierce. They made this huge campaign and they took that man out. They took him out of office. So as a community, we have that power. Meanwhile, he still managed to pass SB 1070. And then in 2010, it was introduced and it was passed, but it wasn't implemented until September 18th of this past September, this year. And so now, communities everywhere, people everywhere across the state are being asked questions for their papers, including Native and Indigenous people. And so this impacts everybody, people that are legal and people that are undocumented. And that's why it's so important for us to fight against this law. Because officers, how do you know who's reasonably suspicious of being undocumented? That's what officers are looking for. If they have reasonable suspicion to ask you about your immigration status, they're going to do it. Does anybody know what officers are looking for or why they would ask somebody about their papers? Huh? Anybody? What is it?
Deport immigrants.
To deport immigrants? Yeah. This law is to deport immigrants. But it's also about having immigrants self-deport. They want to make things so bad here in the state that they want immigrants to self-deport because they don't want to be here because it's so horrible. The conditions to live here are so extreme, right? Any other thing? Why do you think that officers question people? Why would an officer question somebody else's immigration status? What would lead them to question? Suspicion? What is it? Color of skin? What else? Any other things? English as a second language? There's a lot of reasons why officers would question people about their immigration status. And so I have a few that I want to talk to you about. Okay, so we got the presentation from the Utah Police Department back in 2010. And they said these are some of the reasons. This is a part of their training that they give for being able to stop people. They say lack of ID. So people that are stopped or come in contact with law enforcement, they're immediately questioned about their immigration status. If they have an ID from another country, For example, if they present matrícula consular or the Mexican passport, immediately that person is questioned about where they're from. They're asked if they have social security numbers. They're asked about their immigration status, where they were born, when did they get here, what entrance or port did they enter through. All right, there's also people that just voluntarily tell officers. And we're working extremely hard to let people know not to reveal that they're from another country. Sometimes this is the hardest part, is that people are afraid of officers, right? They become intimidated. And then they just immediately tell the officer, I'm undocumented, or I'm illegal, or I'm from another country. So we want to tell people, don't say that. Don't talk about where you're from at any moment. Don't reveal what your immigration status is. It's better to just not say anything else. Some of the other reasons why officers might be stopping people is because they see them scared. They see people nervous. They see people that are driving and they look at them, and then officers will immediately stop people just because they look scared. Other reasons why are because in their training they're saying that if they are in overcrowded or heavy riding vehicles, if there are passengers that are trying to hide or avoid detection, if the person is trying to avoid giving their address, or if the officer says, hey, who's not driving with you in the vehicle? Who's that passenger? Who else is in the car with you? And you say, I don't know. Well, if you say something like that, then the officers will immediately start to question you about more about your immigration status. Also, the way that you dress and difficulty to speak English are some reasonable causes for them to question you about your immigration status. So if an officer hears that you have an accent, or if they think that you are dressed differently, they will ask you about your immigration status. They will ask you, hey, do you have a social security number? Where were you born? Are you from here? What area are you from? And sometimes officers will just, they will just ask you, are you illegal? And some people just say yes, you know? And so this is really, I really believe that this is the civil rights time of our time. This is the civil rights movement of our time. It's just happening with brown people. It's legally now to discriminate and to basically question people and to single out a particular group of people. Because this also causes for people to be racially profiled. Whether it's not written down on a piece of paper and a part of their training, do you all think that this is racial profiling? No? What do you all think? Is it racial profiling? Why do you think it's racial profiling? What is wrong with this type of training? That officers are getting trained to believe that this is enough reason to stop someone and ask them about their immigration status.
A lot of us just have that one car or the pickup, so we know everybody in there. And we load all the groceries, and we'll take the neighbor with us, and because not everybody has a car.
That's right.
So as soon as they see me and my two comadres and the groceries and the kids and the grandkids, and then for not for a lot of the generation here, but for my generation, we spoke Spanish or Latin or we had different languages at home, and we learned English when we went to school. So we don't speak English as well as somebody else. That language is the first language. For us, English is a second language, and a lot of times we didn't even want to speak English. I used to cuss a lot in kindergarten and first grade, and I was really fluent at cussing. I didn't have an accent when I said bad cuss words. And the teacher said if I put that much effort into good words that I could say well. So at first I didn't like, I cussed at her too. And I didn't like it. But then I started knowing that it was English. We used to have call it 1C, 1A, 1B, 1C. The more English you learned, you finally got to kindergarten, but you had to start with 1B1C until you got to kindergarten. And then back then they could promote you on your ability to speak English. So pretty soon I was already in second grade.
So were you stopped? Have you been stopped with your comadres? Have you all been stopped at all and questioned about your immigration status?
We haven't, but you know, we've been like at Walmart and somebody's cruising around and they'll slow down and go around and come back and they don't stop. Mostly, I guess, because we have attitude. We're not scared.
Exactly, but there are
the people that are undocumented.
That's right.
Are horrified.
You hit on a very good point, y'all, and I think that this is the biggest obstacle to overcome is the fear. It's not the law itself. It's that immigrant communities and immigrant families are living in so much fear that it's getting them to see eye to eye with the officer and say to them, I don't want to answer that question. You know, and that's what we need to get people to be able to come to that area of courage and to be fearless and see eye to eye with the officer and say, this is wrong. What you are doing is wrong. It is racial profiling and it is discrimination at its best. And it's discrimination by law and through law. Right now, we don't see people being watered, you know, down like they were back in the 1960s. You don't see people being hanged, right? Like they were with the Jim Crow laws back in the day, right? You don't see people that they're separated in classrooms anymore, right? We don't see people of different colors being separated and being taken into different bathrooms or them having to sit down in different restaurants because of the color of their skin. But what we see now through law is essentially a separation of families. We're seeing people being deported. We are seeing parents, you know, being separated from their kids and kids being left. And then they come home to an empty home and where are the parents? You know, many times we have kids that are just left at the school. The teacher has to take care of them or someone has to take care of the children. So we're doing a lot of education outreach to tell parents how to prepare an immigrant family. So now this is where you all come in, and I think as youth, I have a lot of information that we'll pass out as well. But I think as youth and as a community, and especially with the indigenous community, I think that where you come in to be a part of the solution is to be our allies in reporting the discrimination and reporting the abuses. So we have a hotline called the 1-855 Respeto hotline, or you can also call ACLU, and I'm the person who handles the documentation of abuses that happen throughout the whole state. So the only way right now that we're going to be able to get rid of 1070, to be able to stop this law, is through fighting it in the courts. That's one way to fight it through the courts, right? But then there's all this other work that needs to happen on the community level so that this doesn't keep happening. We need to stop legislation like this from keeping up with us. We need to change the dialogue in Arizona. We need to start talking about solutions that embraces everyone and that it's good for the greater good of Arizona, right? So how can we as youth be a part of this change and be a part of this social change movement and really have the capacity to create this change? So we need your help. We really need you to help us by documenting these stories or by letting us know about what's happening out in the streets. If you get stopped, if anyone in your family, anyone who's indigenous, we want to hear cases of people who are residents, who are citizens, who have been stopped by an officer without reason. You know, sometimes officers will stop someone and say, oh, you were too close to the white line on the road. Or they'll stop people and say, you have a cracked windshield. And immediately, because the way that you look, they will start questioning you about, do you have a driver's license? Do you have your registration? Were you born here? Where are you from? How long have you been living here? So the questioning will begin to start happening. In some situations, if you say, officer, I don't want to answer that question, I choose to remain silent, the officer will say, you know, who knows? It all depends on the officer, what kind of officer you'll get. But in some situations, we have seen that there are people who are citizens and residents that are being taken to ICE, to immigration offices.